My name is Carl Dovman, and I'm the Dean of the College of Architecture and Design. We work diligently every semester to bring thought-provoking lectures and lecturers that can speak to multiple design areas. We seek out this ability with our lecturers to find crossover. And this is because we offer design degrees in architecture, game, graphic, industrial, transportation, and industrial design. We're fortunate to have Gökçen Keskin joining us today from Finland. At least I think that's where she is. We'll see in a minute. She focuses on digital products, and this was a great hook for us as we all seem to be working in both the physical world and the digital world, in everything that we do. Even physical products have digital twins. And I was curious to learn more about this from her with this notion of digital products. Gökçen received her bachelor's degree in industrial and product design from the Middle East Technical University in Turkey, and her master's degree in new media design production from Aalto University in Finland. Since 2012, she's been designing digital products. Some of us also know her through her work with Gravity Sketch. She works to create humane interfaces and products that enhance human life and creativity. She's also interested in emerging technologies and the intersection between technology, society, art, and science. In her role as the lead designer at Gravity Sketch, she helped to develop a good product experience for users in collaboration with product management, engineering, research, and customer success. I look forward to hearing her career path and her sharing that with us and where she sees her moving next. Please help me welcome Gökçen Keskin.
Thank you, Carl. That was a very kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Well, Carl already mentioned what I have been doing, but I'm still gonna provide you with a very quick introduction. That is true, I'm based in Finland, Helsinki. So it's my evening right now, but not too late, it's 6:30. I decided to talk a bit about the highlights of my career. It's gonna look like I knew what I was doing when I was going through this decade, but a disclaimer on that, I didn't know. I just wanted to think about if I was one of the audiences today, what I would expect from this kind of a lecture. So I will try and talk about the highlights, also certain decision-making points. And I'm hoping it would give you some ideas that you can apply to your own careers, own decision-making points. But feel free to just take notes as I'm going through and ask me questions in the end, because again, I'm repeating, I didn't know what I was doing probably, but on the hindsight, it feels like everything you're interested or every idea that you follow in the end somehow feeds back into the longer journey. I think that's overall what I'm going to be trying to emphasize through the presentation. So Carl has already mentioned I have studied industrial design. I wanted to put this two visuals here because even these two projects actually show how easy it is to change your idea throughout your studies or career. I thought for some time that I was gonna design boats. I was really interested in boats and yachts, but I did an internship when I was studying. And I noticed that that is not what I want at all, because when you're drawing something, when you're sketching out ideas or turning them into maybe digital artifacts or dreaming of yourself designing something, it can excite you. But if you go and try that in real life, it can look quite different than how you imagine it. So that's I think why internships are actually great opportunities, but it doesn't have to come in the form of internship. Sometimes this happens after graduation too. You go try something out and notice that it's not at all what you wanted. So luckily for me, it happened during my studies. And then I started to think about what do I actually am interested in. So the other thing was technology. I was really curious about emerging technologies, how that is combined with industrial design, because at the time I kind of still thought that I was going to be an industrial designer. So this project on the left is a project where I combined video games with a physical rehabilitation system for people who had injuries. So this would be used during their recovery period for them to regain their balance. But after I worked on that project, I was like, okay, this is good. Digital products and how you can combine them with industrial design is quite interesting. But that actually opened a new window to me. I noticed that you can actually just design digital products. And I was like, okay, that's maybe what I could try. The reason for that was not because I didn't enjoy industrial design, but I think I wanted to design software solely. I don't know how it's become that clear to me. Maybe it's because of around that time, this is what I graduated in 2012, iPhone was everywhere. Maybe it's because of that. And I had quite a few software developers, software engineer friends. So they were working for software companies. Maybe that influenced me, but I just wanted to give that a try. And I stick with that. That didn't change so much. But throughout my career, I had some other kind of changes. So I started designing digital products, and that has been the case. But first, it was mobile, and then now I'm in VR space a bit more. And a couple other things that kept changing was I worked for consultancy companies. I worked as a self-employed. I worked for product companies. So all of these actually happened when I was just following interesting projects, I think. At the beginning, I didn't really have a very structured career plan. I didn't even know, probably consciously, or I didn't have a list of what matters to me so much. But my priority was, I guess, to work on things that somehow interested me, somehow sparked some curiosity. So first, I worked for a company in Istanbul. This was a this was a mobile software development house. You could consider that a consultancy company, but maybe it was more like a strategic partner for the client companies. I worked for some mobile banking projects, airline companies, and a couple of startups when I was working there. And I think at the early years of your career, before you see a lot of different kind of projects, most of the stuff you work on is actually quite interesting because you're building your own skills. So that time now looks quite different than how I would approach a project, which is something that I try to keep alive actually, because when you're into a new space, I didn't have UI design skills, right? I didn't have any information on how software development would work. So those first 2-3 years was mostly just focusing on that rather than thinking about what the project is. And I think that is the unique advantage of early years in your career. Everything is going to be interesting and exciting because overall you're actually working on yourself and on your skills. And I was quite lucky, I think, because the team I was working with was quite established, considering that it was the early days of mobile software development still. We had software engineers, really talented ones, business analysts, product managers. So I kind of had this chance to work with different roles, diverse roles, which is quite important. This is actually one highlight that I can mention. Moving forward, whenever you have a chance to work with people from different mindsets, different disciplines, take that chance and work with them because it definitely teaches you a different way of thinking. So after that, after working for that company for almost 3 years, I think, or 2.5 years, I decided to become a self-employed. because at the same time I wanted to apply for a master's program. So I continued designing digital products since then, but I had some side quests along the journey. One of which is my big interest in technology and how societies and humans interact with it and how it changes us, how we change it. So around that time, I thought my interest in technology as a profession alone did not really satisfy me. I was quite curious about how artists use technology, how activists use technology. And thinking about that, like thinking about how creators approach to anything new, how people research these technologies even, how do they decide that one particular technology is worthy of our time and investment. That kind of led me to think a bit more about other types of users. So I knew that, okay, we have the skills and we sit down and create mobile apps with that, but what other kind of people do with technology? And at the same time, I was also interested in precursors to certain technology. So I just wanted to show some inspirations here. It's kind of a good timeline, in my opinion. Suzanne Lacey's work in 1977 is spatial urban art, which could be considered in the same family as Krzysztof Wojciechowski's work. That was a projection, which is like using a technology again in the urban and public space. And later we see augmented reality being used for intervention again. So when I was thinking about this stuff and these previous things, about like how we research technology, how we make use of them and incorporate them into our creativity, I decided that I want to study new media. So this was not a career move at all. And I think at the time it was kind of weird to think of it that way because it's like financially a stupid decision when you think about it, or at the time it looked like that. Masters was something, at least around me, people would do if they were aiming for a academic career, or I don't know if this is different in the US, but at least in Europe, you would do it for your career mostly. It would mean getting better at something you're doing basically. Whereas I was more like, I'm just going to spend some time and money on my hobby, which is something people do also. But later on, this actually ended up being very, very important for the rest of my career. More on that a bit later. So for my master's, I decided to just first have a very general approach to new media design and just wanted to learn what's up there. But at the end, I just went back to the first idea that I had before even starting the program, which was using augmented reality as a tool for public art. And throughout my studies, I was at the same time a self-employed designer. I was still working for my clients from before, but also I met with new clients. And this interest actually, how it translated into job prospects. First is I worked with this fully distributed team called Ink and Switch. And the way I met with them was through a job ad. But around that time, I was actually not specifically looking for anything. I would receive this notifications from job boards. And when I was scrolling through, their job spec attracted my attention because they were talking about augmenting human intellect and using digital tools as an extension of our brains. So this is the stuff that I'm familiar with because of my research in human-computer interaction. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I would like to meet with these people. So we ended up working together after that. And I didn't really notice that job came through my interests. I was just thinking that I'm a UI UX designer. I design digital products. Of course, I'm going to work on digital products like this, but it's not actually like that. After all, when you're looking for keywords, I think you end up finding that are you kind of, it's not like manifesting, but you kind of attract, or you're drawn to things that you have been building this interest for. So after I worked on a small research project with them, we did a bigger project, Muse, in 2019. Ink and Switch team has been working in a different model, I would say, compared to more conventional ways you would see in the industry. They have this Hollywood model where they would bring a team together based on the needed skills for that project, for a specific idea. And after that, the team would go and maybe work on other projects. And later, if there's another project where you would need the same skills, you would bring them together again. So that happened to me. First, I worked with them on a tool called Text Notes, where we explored speed of thought note-taking. Later, our timelines have overlapped again, and we worked on Muse, where we explored how tablet form factor could be used for reading, thinking, and developing ideas with a very fluid and open space. So around this time, I have already decided that my interest is specifically in creator tools. I was at the same time working on my thesis, which was in AR space. This is a bit before sorry, I mixed the order, but this is an important one to talk about as well. So before I started working with the Ink and Switch team again, I was working for a consultancy company here in Finland. And with them, I worked on this pilot project called Solar to Go. It was a cooperation between the company I was working for and an energy company in Finland. We basically worked with local solar developers in India to understand how solar power could support the main grid, especially in rural areas, because in India you have the main grid, but a lot of rural towns and villages are not connected to it. So instead you would go, well, these developers in India would go and install microgrids and use solar energy, and people in the village would use this pay-as-you-go model. So we created a dashboard and a mobile application for this process. This was one of the interesting ones, and I wanted to put this as a highlight here because, again, like I didn't, of course, it was partially luck that I was assigned to this project, but in the company I was working for, we would usually just talk about our interests and what kind of projects we would want to work on. And I was most of the time just saying that if there's anything along the lines of emerging tech or something adventurous with no clear end to it, you can assign me to that. And when I think about it now, it has been, I mean, that was probably the first time I actually verbalized it, but that has been most of the time my approach, even though it seems really unsystematic. What I would do was defining some priorities and keeping the rest a bit flexible. So if what matters to me is an interesting project, I could maybe compromise on something else, maybe having less structure, because unsurprisingly, these two usually go together. Interesting and emerging projects have less structure around them, but you learn how to work with it. So yeah, when I was working with Ink and Switch team and thinking about how I could continue working with tools for creators, for productivity, at the same time finishing my master's, I met with a company called Vario. They are based in Finland, and they create enterprise-grade XR and VR headsets. A friend of mine who knew that I was really interested in AR and was kind of I guess, knowledgeable in the field, have introduced me to their design director, and I joined the team. The Vario back then had this dual system where part of the team would be working on future opportunities, future prospects. So we would explore an area, and later on a productization team would turn that into a real product. I guess this is a very common practice in car design industry as well. So you would have teams that would work on different kind of future timelines. One team would be working on product that's going to be released this year, whereas the other team would be focusing on a 5-year projection, and you have 10-year projection teams. So I was in a team where we would mostly do research and development kind of activities. And my major focus was on thinking about concepts and use cases around multimodal interactions and input experiences. So Vario headsets had eye tracking, they had hand tracking, and we were at the time considering how a controller would be involved with this. So that was the project that I was working on, and I was quite happy with it. It was going great. I was finally, and this is very important about this project, combining my learnings from industrial design actually in a more, I guess, to a bigger extent, because my studies in industrial design definitely have helped me to become a better digital product designer, because after all, you're designing. If I would actually expand this a bit, so you start with understanding a problem, defining a problem, and that's basically the same with all design activities. But also after that, like how you create, how you think about a problem, how you become better at your craft, how you become better at thinking about a problem, it's pretty much the same across design or creativity disciplines. Maybe this is a bit of a tangent, but when I talk to someone who makes music or films, or someone who paints, also like when I, let's say, cook, a lot of the creation actually looks very similar. That's something that I've noticed. One example is when you start a project, for the first, like before you iterate on it at all, you basically just bring a lot of unnecessary things to your first idea. Later on, with a lot of iterations, you actually find the simplest way to that solution. This is one thing that doesn't change. It's quite similar in a lot of creators' processes. So industrial design education, because of how I was trained for thinking like a designer, and also how I learned how to research and study user and the problem, has helped me a lot. But at Vario, I was collaborating with industrial designers, and that actually was a great opportunity because I could understand their language and they understood my language. And I finally had the chance to have that collaboration. That was one of my dreams, I think, when I first decided that I'm not going to be an industrial designer. I want to design digital products, but one day it would be so great to collaborate with an industrial designer and see how they actually function in a industrial setting. So also another thing I think I had the chance to use and apply here was my spatial thinking, because that's something that you're trained for when you study industrial design. And when I was designing for screens, that was something I was really missing. At Vario, I had the chance to use that kind of thinking. But a pandemic happened, and our department at Vario was closed at the very beginning of it, so I was laid off. And around that time, I met with Gravity Sketch, which was a very natural fit when you think about it, and it was pure luck, and it was amazing. But what happened was, when I was at Vario, I was studying Gravity Sketch users. because we were focusing on people who would use VR and XR for serious work, people who would use these new technology, not for entertainment, but for productivity as a part of their career. I basically just went on to LinkedIn and said, this happened, I'm laid off, and I want to continue working in VR. If you have interest in projects, reach out to me. GraviSketch reached out to me, and that's actually quite interesting, because when you're maybe in a transition period like that, I guess you also feel a bit paralyzed, or at least that's what happened to me, because now when I look back at it, it's such an obvious thing that I should just like go and check GraviSketch job board and see if they have openings, but I didn't even think about it for some reason. Luckily, they reached out to me, we talked and decided that I would start working with them. When I first joined, I basically just spent a month or two on exploring the tool in a very great detail and understanding the shortcomings of it, the flows that could be improved. I don't know if we have GraviSketch users among the audience, but it's a great tool. But we definitely have designed that. So that was the first thing that I started doing. But around that time, I want to stress pandemic and its effect on emerging tech a lot, because these are the realities of the industry, and moving forward, I think we're going to keep seeing similar things happening. Companies, you would think that with pandemic and the beginning of this remote working boom, VR definitely has gained some popularity. That's definitely true, but it's happened over time, and it doesn't happen for like every company equally. I guess bigger companies benefited maybe from it a bit more, whereas it was a bit more challenging for smaller companies, because when that kind of an uncertain crisis hits the world, people basically stop investing in future, or investing in technology that hasn't really proved its value yet. So VR was basically one of those. And that's exactly why GraviSketch had this brief VR winter around that time. They have noticed that VR headset sales were not very high. And around that time, we also wanted to explore what other kind of creation modes could be available to our users. Because another thing is, other than business requirements, when you create a piece of technology, you kind of want to understand how like mainstream, how majority of your target audience would use it. Whereas if you're focusing on only headset owners, at the time, it wasn't a big number. So we decided to, and it was a project that was actually realized before I joined, our iPad tool, but it was more of a POC kind of project. So we decided to spend more time and effort into that, to understand we have this geometry system, and how could we now create an iPad application from it and see how pencil and screen is going to allow users to get on board, like have a taste of GraviSketch, and what can we learn from it. So that was the project that I worked on shortly after I joined, which is this tool. If you have an iPad, I would definitely recommend you go check it out. And after that, we worked on that project, kind of put that into a research mode, continued learning from it. But after all, VR tool is our flagship product. So I switched gears to that. I started working on improving the existing features and working on new features, as we continuously do. Also started doing something that was completely new to me, which was leading and growing the design team. So this happens quite often to designers, but also to different people from different disciplines in the industry. After spending some time in designing, like doing hands-on work, you first of all should be translating that into like coaching and mentorship to your peers who are maybe less experienced than you. That's a very good way of also improving the efficiency of your team. And also another topic that I had a very organic approach until now has been whatever that was needed in the teams that I was working for, I would just be like, yeah, let's try it. I think I can do it. We will see if I can or I cannot. So I decided leading the design team. I'm really honored I was given with that opportunity. It is a completely different discipline, a learning that I have now. Quite probably people who have a more systematic approach to their career have known about this. Maybe among the audience, we know people, we have people who have researched this, but this was something I didn't know super clearly last year. You mostly follow different tracks, especially in tech right now. You could just stay, remain being a individual contributor and continue doing hands-on work. You could follow a different path and focus your energy on growing a team or spending your time on organizational structuring. There are some hybrid roles as well, which can function quite well in certain contexts. So I kind of did the hybrid way in GraviSketch. I was a designer, and I also focused some time and energy on leading and growing the design team, meaning I was busy with a lot of organizational structuring. So these two things are quite different, because when you think about it, I'm just trying to also show you the arc here, like starting from studying industrial design, physical goods, moving to software, but then moving to actually designing design teams or designing organizations, because this eventually happens too. When you think about creating products of any sort, like it could be physical goods, it could be digital goods, it's rarely one person doing it. Most of the time, there are big teams behind it. And how these big teams function together is actually magic. Like, I definitely don't know enough about this. I'm hoping to learn more. But I feel like from this point on, I'm going to be continuing to learn about still like how to design better. And I will continue acquiring new skills around emerging tech, but also I definitely would like to learn more about how teams can make this happen in an efficient manner. So now I think I'm at a point where all these learnings that I have been collating until now is gonna hopefully translate into how I can learn a bit more about people getting together and being creative together in an efficient and joyful way. So this is an update actually that I would announce to everyone with this presentation. Yesterday was my last day at GraviSketch, and this is kind of an interesting thing to talk about, because when you enjoy a job and enjoy what you're doing so much, it's kind of unexpected to notice that like you're tired. You would think that when you're doing something you love, you're not going to get tired, but you do. So learning new things all the time, continuously, which is something that I have been following, is, I think it makes it quite necessary to sometimes take a step back, reflect, and understand what you have been really learning from all of this. And hopefully you can translate that into your next step. So right now, what is next for me is because also this is a 10 years milestone for me in my career, I decided to just like take this pit stop and think about everything that I have been learning, and understanding which ones I want to maybe focus more on and get deeper at, and maybe redefine my priorities and goals, and also draft some sort of a career plan now. So this is a goal. I have never done this before. I mostly, as I mentioned a couple times during this presentation, followed a very organic approach. Now I feel like, okay, I've learned some things. I can finally maybe draft a career plan, and moving forward, I can reshape it. But overall, looking back at it now, and this presentation has helped me a great deal. I think it doesn't matter if you jump between different modes of working, or jump between designing like digital, physical goods, designing teams, designing organizations, whatever you do. Overall, the learnings and practices you demonstrate in all of these are relevant, and you can always link them to each other. Because in my mind, creativity is basically your tool, and that's what you're using in all of these tasks. Obviously, having a generalist approach has helped me quite a bit, because you can also switch between doing different things. But even if you would want to choose a niche and decide to just get really good at it, and later on, if you want to change it, or if you want to combine it, if you want to draw maybe different skills from different disciplines, after all, probably the baseline, the foundation is how you identify a problem, how you approach to it, and later how you use your crafting skills around solving that problem, which is, as I said, your creativity. Yeah, and I think that is the end of it. I would be more than happy to answer your questions now. And I can anytime jump back to any of the slides if there's any question related to that.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see you. I think you can see me, maybe. Any questions? Please. This is so she can hear you.
Gotcha.
Not for us.
So I really enjoyed that. Thank you. My name's Ian, and I guess my question is, like this summer I'm going into my first internship. Where should I be looking? Okay, that's what I thought. I'm going into my first internship, and so my question is, how did you know when you had that kind of experience that it wasn't for you, and what kind of tipped you off on that, I guess?
Oh, that's a really funny story. It's a very funny story. I don't know if this is gonna illuminate you, but it's gonna entertain you. So I was an intern at a yacht firm. They were basically building super yachts. After that, I kind of collaborated with another company that was doing smaller boats. Maybe if that was my first experience, my opinion would have been different. But in that company that builds super yachts, one day we started working on a problem, which was basically doing recalculations for a completed yacht, because the owner, the client, ordered a strip pole, and it was like way too late into the project. So all the calculations, all of has been done, and the team was basically thinking about, oh, should we go for carbon fiber? We need to find a light material. So like that wasn't something that they could reject. And I thought, I don't think I can spend my energy on this like for the rest of my life, which was when I look at it now, it was basically a mismatch of culture between me and the industry. I basically didn't consider that problem worthy of solving. And I think maybe that could help you. Like if you feel like the problem you're dealing with in that internship is worthy of solving, then maybe you could be on board. If you feel like I really don't care, then probably you're not gonna care and it's gonna be very difficult for you to learn anything from it. Was that helpful at all?
Any questions? It's a quiet group here. What would we like to do? There's no more questions here.
Maybe I can ask one. Is there any Gravity Sketch user in the group? Like, do you use it for your studies?
Yeah, so we're dealing with the audio here. Her question was if anyone uses Gravity Sketch that's in the audience. So there's 2 people raising their hands, and there may be a couple of other people online too. What's your question for them?
I'm just curious how it has changed the way they design or the way they ideate and think.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
I'm curious to hear if using an emerging tech, a new tool has changed the way they ideate or the way they design.
Hi, yeah, I'm Hunter, by the way. Yeah, I've been using Gravity Sketch for, I guess, 2 or 3 years now, 2 years. I've integrated it pretty heavily into like my design workflow. That being, I'm in transportation design, so obviously there's like a lot of sketching involved, a lot of like really quick ideating. And one thing that is always sort of a pitfall is like falling to perspective issues or like rapidly producing a lot of work, whereas Gravity Sketch has been really easy to rapidly produce a model or even just like line work to throw into different perspectives and like work out different details around a specific model, whereas like if I were to do that in a different program, it could potentially take me 2-3 times as long to do that, as well as just the whole like being immersed in your model aspect. Like clay modeling is obviously very like useful in the automotive industry, and not like being a student, you don't always have access to that or have the time to be designing and working on a clay model to keep those together. But with Gravity Sketch, you have the ability to like more quickly produce a model, and you can still be in the presence of something that's full scale, or you can get right up close and like sort of be in that environment to a 1-to-1 scale on your design, which is really important. So yeah, it's definitely sped up the workflow. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
I would also add that like I found it really useful for sort of like verifying a project that I'm working on. So like last semester I had this project that was sort of in between a bike and a car. And it was really frustrating to me because as a transportation designer, primarily what we're doing is cars. And so that's what I'm like really used to is like the scale of the car and like, what the outside should look like, what the inside should look like. And this was a totally different thing. It was like 3-wheeled. It was really like hard to wrap my head around in a lot of ways. But I really enjoyed in Gravity Sketch, first being able to sort of like work around the mannequin in a very like easy, seamless way made a big difference for that. And then the other thing of just being able to like sit inside the model and be like, can I see out? Can I reach the steering wheel? All these kind of things that like, you know, a lot of other design disciplines, you would make some sort of mock-up or a prototype to test if it's ergonomic, but you can't really do that for like an object that's as complicated and at that scale. So that was really beneficial to me.
Yeah, human factors studies is something, a use case that we have observed time and time again.
And that may tie into some of what you were talking about as well, just thinking about, well, I'm thinking about the connection between us being a technological university and that we're constantly looking at these emerging technologies, but also from your perspective today, bringing a kind of human aspect to that or other things that maybe we can't do otherwise that maybe we should be doing. And so I think those are two great examples, and I think you shared some examples as well. You want to, here you go.
Jacob, one of our online viewers, Jacob Smith, says incorporating it into the architecture field allows for us to visualize space in a new way and be able to feel the scale that you are designing at rather than seeing it very small on a computer screen. Adapting the design to the human scale is a lot easier to do in VR technology world with Gravity Sketch.
Yeah, very similar to, I guess, what we just heard about the transportation design. And I think when I had the chance to observe new users who we were onboarding to Gravity Sketch, you notice two different aha moments. One is one of the students has mentioned, it's exactly when you are able to walk around what you just created. That is so powerful. Even though you know that it's going to be eventually a real tangible thing in the world, being able to see it so early on in a virtual space, I think is quite powerful. And yeah, the second thing is when you can create surfaces and volumes that easily, that rapidly, that basically unlocks like great possibilities. You can iterate much faster. You can basically think faster also because you don't have the limitations of physical mockups anymore. Yeah, there's definitely, I think maybe the use in architecture is a bit under-researched so far because at Gravity Sketch, we, of course, for like time and resource reasons, we would go use case by use case. We have already had a lot of automated design professionals and students. Footwear, I think, is a very popular use case so far. Industrial design, any human factor related like variables or furniture, things like that. Architecture is something that we have seen some use of it, and we know that there's a lot of value in it, but we haven't studied a lot. But yeah, what was it Jacob mentioned is a value that I think Gravity Sketch definitely is going to spend some time on exploring in the future.
So Gökçen, thank you so much. I think there's a lot of conversations that will emerge from this, and I think we're going to keep an eye on you and see what you're up to next. I think all of this sounds really exciting. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was great.